Neil talked briefly about how to speak with students that have some previous experience in piano, whether they've had lessons or played in the past, or maybe they're even a more accomplished player. And here's a tool that you can use in those instances. I don't believe these were mentioned in the initial training, but this is a resource in the library called the Student Assessment List. And there's also a graph that goes with this list that I will show you.
Don't worry, I am going to show you exactly where to find these documents at the end of this video.
And this is a way of pointing out some of the benefits that people that have prior experience enjoy from learning with Simply Music.
Let's take a look at this graph. And this is a sample assessment graph. And along the left side here, we have from 0 to 10, with 0 representing no experience at all, 10 representing a lot of experience. And then along the bottom, we have a bunch of abbreviations, and those represent all of those items on the student assessment list we just looked at.
I'll just quickly go through those. This is repertoire, classical music, contemporary music, blues, jazz, accompaniment, arrangements, reading rhythm, reading pitch, sight reading, transcribing, composition, improvisation, scale, key signature, and integrated theory. And we're going to go back to that list here, and then we'll come back again here to the graph. And then here's a blank graph if you wanted to use this with a particular person. But let's just go back here to this assessment list. And this is a nice explanation of what he means by all of those categories. So the repertoire, how many pieces can the student play at any given time without the need for written music? So if you go back here, the red graph line here represents Simply Music students, and then the gray is what Neil put in as a typical traditional student, what the typical experience might be. Repertoire is typically, they don't have a large repertoire of songs that they can play without needing music in front of them. And then, so we're on the other end of the spectrum there. We make sure we have a large repertoire at all times. And then, of course, classical music is often the sole focus in traditional lessons. And then going across the different genres of music, classical, contemporary, blues, jazz, accompaniment, and arrangements. Transcription refers to the ability to hear something and then write it down. In our reading rhythm program in class, I might go, okay, we're going to do some transcribing, and I might go bum, 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 and then the students write down the rhythm that I just spoke. With notes, it's not that we expect our students to be able to hear a pitch and write down the pitch, but we do transcribing exercises with intervals because that's the approach we take with teaching pitch. Sight reading is not a focus of Simply Music, and that is not the same as knowing how to read music and knowing how to figure out a piece of music. Sight reading is a separate skill, which means, you know, the ability to sit down and play a piece of music through the first time you've ever seen the music. More a focus in traditional programs. This is the sight reading one here. And then, of course, composition and improvisation are typically not a part of most traditional programs. It's a focus in ours. And then these last three areas having to do with scale and theory. Well, you do get that in traditional lessons. Typically at the very beginning, they start out with scales. When we say scale, we're not talking about playing scales. We're talking about using an understanding of scale in playing music. The approach that we take is we introduce it much later, but it's has immediate relevance and application. And so it's more practical knowledge in those areas, how to apply it to music. So let's say you have someone that inquires about lessons with you, and they say, well, I've had 3 years of piano. If they're in your studio, like maybe at an introductory session, and you have one of these graphs, you could take out this blank graph and then just say, well, where would you rate your knowledge in each of these areas, and then just have them on a scale of 0 to 10 plot their graph, and then show the typical Simply Music graph. So they can easily see then, well, they've got lots of areas where they can expand. And so also be aware that they'll move through the program more quickly, and they'll be able to start some of these special programs like accompaniment and arrangements right away, comp and improv right away, which we do anyway. And that will help them to stay challenged from the very beginning. So in order to find this, go to the teacher library, and then you can just search student assessment in here. These are the list and the graph. There is also an audio file that goes along with that. And then you can print those. It might be nice to keep one on hand, like I said. And it might be even helpful to sit down and plot that graph out for yourself. Like, where are you in each of these areas?